Welcome back to the 10th anniversary season of Why Blank Lost. I'm David Bloomberg, and when you have me and my co-host Jessica Lewis together, that's two stones with one bird, or a birdie carrying a stone, or maybe it's a stoned bird hiding in two bushes, picking the wrong rock.
Oh, you did. You brought it all together for me. Isn't that lovely? Yeah, two birds, wrong stone. How about
Yeah,
that? Yeah.
exactly, exactly.
Yes, very much so.
Yes, Rizzo could not get that saying right, but he did a lot of other things this episode that helped push the action in the direction he wanted while keeping attention away from himself and focused on the person we will primarily be discussing today. That
Mm-hmm.
is Sophie, the one with an E, not the one who is Jessica's winner pick.
Winner pick.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sophie with an E, but yes, Sophie without an E still in the game. And I'm pretty excited about that, I must
Yeah.
say.
And now she can just be Sophie. They can stop calling her Soph.
I know. And
Uh,
I am happy that there was some clarity provided about the Sophie
yeah.
gate that was
Yeah.
existing.
I mean, the last name thing, where it turned out, this is from Mike Bloom's interview, by the way, if anyone didn't see it, where someone in the cast who remained unnamed said, no, it was too difficult to say their last names. Their last names aren't that difficult. Uh,
They're not.
and then they wanted to go by what they'd been calling themselves, Blue Sophie and Yellow Sophie. And Jeff was like, no, you need real names. And it's like,
Mhm.
you're the one who, or, well, I don't know if he is or the others did, but he allowed Purple Kelly to come into existence, which literally created a new term for someone hidden by the edit. Maybe that's
Right.
why. Maybe he doesn't like the fact that
Yeah.
this
That's interesting.
this came out of it, and he doesn't want people using yellow or blue as a word to describe how they were shown in the edit or something like that.
Hmm. Yeah, because there was some discussion early on about yellow Sophie being purple Sophie as well. So
Yes.
perhaps he wanted to get away from the color scheme.
Yes. So yeah. Now, of course, I mentioned Rizzo, and his name will undoubtedly come up, as will a few others, as we follow our usual path of comparing Yellow Sophie's game to a set of guiding rules for winning I originally wrote way back after season 1 and have been updating ever since. We'll collect all the non-spoiler information available to us from what we saw on TV, interviews, social media, and secret scenes. And the newest published version of the rules can be found by going to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed and clicking on the link bubble conveniently labeled for the Survivor rules. Speaking of interviews, I should mention that, of course, we did last week's Why Juwan Lost before his interviews came out.
Hmm.
I'm happy to say nothing he said really changed
Changed
anything,
anything.
yeah, that we would have gone with. So
Right.
that's always nice when that happens and it's not some huge revelation that I
Mm-hmm.
don't think we've
Yeah.
had a situation where the Thanksgiving boot says something in their interviews that completely changes what we had said. So that's,
Yeah.
good
That's
for
good.
us. It's kind of like,
Let's keep that going.
yeah, it's kind of like, after 10 years of doing it this way and, 25 years all over from all around for me, we kind of know what we're doing.
We figured it out just a little bit.
Yes.
I'll give
Yes.
you most of the credit though.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. But hey,
Well, I
you've
tend
been
to
here
follow
for a
your lead.
big chunk of those. So,
It is a little bit crazy, right?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Long time. Long time.
So I also should mention we had said Omer Zahir would be here with us this week. So anyone, if you're wondering, where he's hidden on the video or in the audio, something came up for him. He will be here next week.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
think he was worried about that two birds being killed by one stone because he really loves birds. I think that's what it was.
Yes. And he is fabulous. So
Yes. All right. Well, before we address how Sophie did in terms of the rules, we always have some other things to discuss. And let's start with the rules. Specifically, Stephen essentially referenced two of them in this week's episode, talking about the need to separate your emotions from strategy
mm-hmm.
in Rule 4, and also how you need to adjust your game plans and be flexible as per Rule 3. Now, it's possible that could have been a coincidence, but when I posted a short video about this, He commented and he said he loves our gameplay breakdowns. So I'm going to say that is not a coincidence.
It is not. And I will say, even though you've started with the rules, I do also want to say this was like a Steven heavy episode. It was fantastic. He really stepped it up, and I will forever love the fact that his positive affirmation for himself
Yes.
was a rocket scientist.
Yes.
I mean, when you get to say that about yourself and mean it, and like
Yes.
you can do anything, you're a rocket scientist. Yeah, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
As he said, everything was coming up Steven. Now, I worry that it won't be next week, but we'll wait till we get to
Oh,
the
I have a theory. I have a
okay.
theory.
I have lots of theories. It's just a matter of which one is the correct theory. So,
Sure. Yeah, that's
you know,
true. Hmm.
now, of course, one reason that Stephen had to discuss the issue of emotions is that so many people were talking about them this week,
Yeah.
mostly because they were mad at someone else or had a strong dislike. But there were
Mm.
also a lot of rationalizations of people trying to claim their strategy and emotions just happened to line up, when I really think it was a case of making an emotional decision and then cherry picking supposed reasons that this made sense in the game too. Because
Oh, for sure.
once again, there was a clear shot to take at Savannah, and instead, they didn't.
Mm.
Of
Yeah.
course, yeah, we'll talk about what Sophie did to draw this kind of attention in a few minutes, and we'll talk about, later on in Appendix A, why or how different people made their
Mm.
decisions. But arguably, it shouldn't have mattered if everyone else followed the fourth rule.
And it's fascinating that one of the opening scenes was Sage telling Sophie,
Mm-hmm.
"You've just handed Savannah $1 million." And that is what we see in one of the opening scenes. And
Yep.
then we have the outcome that we have. So it was really kind of like, that's interesting. And I think Sage was pretty clear that this was retaliatory, and that's
Oh, yeah.
what it was. And but we will get there. I won't jump ahead.
Yes. Yeah. And yeah, I actually just posted a video this morning on that exact topic that, on the one hand, Sage said, you just handed her $1 million. And then by the end of the episode, she was voting her out. And
Mhm.
it's like, you need a little more logical consistency in that one.
Yes.
So, yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now, moving to, well, actually back to Rizzo, it's interesting to me how he is being viewed in the game. And I've been talking to a few people about this, both on Blue Sky and then through text message, like with Dr. Jeremy Faust. I definitely think he's doing well.
Mm.
His strategy of pushing someone else as the bigger threat has, turned into an ongoing thing, and it just keeps working, even though it really shouldn't.
Mhm.
The one thing that I worry about for him is that it seems like we keep hearing about Savannah is on the path to win. Savannah is the one they have to get out. I mean, they haven't done it yet, but we keep hearing that.
Right, right, right.
We haven't heard that about him. We
Right.
heard they wanted to get rid of his idol and maybe him, but
Mhm.
lately, by lately I mean in the last week or two, it's been Savannah, Savannah, Savannah.
Right.
I wonder if that has become one reason people aren't too worried about his idol. And some people were suggesting this even weeks ago, and I poo-pooed it. And I said, no, come on. They've
Mm.
said they want to get rid of him. But now I wonder if they're viewing him like Xander was viewed in
Oh my
41.
god, you said the name. I was going to
Yes.
say he's the Xander. He is I
Yes.
truly feel at this point he is the Xander of the season. Yes.
I just
Mhm.
I mean, he shouldn't be, and no slight against Xander, but Xander was not driving the strategy. We
Right. And
see
right.
Rizzo driving strategy.
But we
I
also thought Xander was doing more than he was, and it wasn't until we saw the Jury Speaks videos that we all went, "Oh, wait. Nobody's worried about Xander." Everyone was like, "Yeah, he's not going to be an issue at the end."
I mean that's a long time ago to remember, but I feel like you and I had picked up, whether it was from interviews or other things, that Xander was not seen as a threat. Nobody worried about him. But yes,
And
there
maybe
are
we did,
still, yeah, there were
yes.
still people saying Xander should have won. They
Yeah.
who were just watching the TV edit, and that's all they got.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I am very much in agreement that there is a Xander-esque component happening here, but I do see a distinct difference. I do think that he is more of a driving force,
yes,
and I think for him, his number one is the best number one he could have picked because they're working together in such a way
right,
that he's protecting her so much and making things better for her, and by him having an idol that can potentially help her as well. So there's this weird, like, yeah, he's not an issue. We don't need to worry about him, maybe, if that's what's happening. But they still have to worry about him because of the relationship he has with Savannah, and he still has the idol and he can
right.
still use it to save Savannah. So it's a very strange, like, kind of cat and mouse game that they're playing with this idol
Hmm.
because they know exactly where it is, which is why I'm hoping that my girl Sophie does the right thing.
Yes, yeah. Now, I think that the reason he's not being taken as seriously is Savannah, as we've previously discussed, has this kind of more intense and in your face
Yes.
personality that puts her front and center, while
Mhm.
Rizzo's fun personality, like he played a fake idol for no reason, for shits and giggles,
It
basically,
was
as Mike
literally for
Bloom
that.
said.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's he. I think that makes people see him as less of a threat. And if
Mhm.
you're not the one in those conversations with him and you don't realize how he's manipulating people to do what he wants them to do, I, I think you're just not seeing it. And if that is the case, it's going to be difficult for him to win, even with the moves he has made.
I don't disagree. And if he's sitting next to Savannah, he's definitely not winning.
Right? He needs to get rid of her before the end so he can
Right.
claim credit
Mhm.
for all the moves without her out talking
Yeah.
him.
Right. Yeah. No, and I think that that's going to be a very interesting moment that we'll see because if they are sitting next to each other, it's going to be incredibly difficult for him, I think, to defend anything that he did outside of working directly with Savannah. She
Right.
will certainly take the credit for it. And I think the credit will be given to her because of all of the reasons that you've just said. She seems to be much more the front and center
Hmm.
individual that people are focusing on, in addition to her challenge wins. So
Right.
she's got that, it's kind of like the cherry on top. And she also has the extra vote that she played correctly. That she actually used it in a way that we
Hmm.
don't see people often do when they
Right.
have an extra vote. So I do think that for Rizzo, he's put himself in a very, very precarious situation by tying himself to Savannah, who is playing an incredible game, and he's supporting that incredible game, but he feels like he's really killing it, right?
Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
this so I don't know if he's gonna actually see it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll find out. Now, do you have anything or anyone else you want to discuss before we move into the rules for Sophie?
I do. I have a question for you actually,
Ooh.
because yes, I wanted to see what your thoughts were on this because I've been trying to kind of bring it around in my head. Now, Stephen, who had to do an insane amount of
Yes.
work to get the advantage that he got, which I don't think the advantage he got is worth all of the work that he had to do to get it. That was a whole lot. But why is it steal a vote is better than the um, block a vote, at least in Rizzo's mind?
Well, just because steal a vote basically blocks that person from voting and gives you an extra vote at the same time.
But it doesn't necessarily change the numbers because even if you just block a vote, you still have a majority by blocking that one.
I mean, if you're tied, yeah. If like in the upcoming, what we
Right.
expect, I think, to be a 3-3 tie,
Mhm.
he can make it into a 3-2 instead.
Mhm.
But
Sure.
in the seven person, let's say it had been 4-3 against him, he could have made it 4-3 against or in his favor by stealing a vote.
I see. I was just kind of working through this. I'm like, well,
So,
but I guess I was looking at it with the 6 and not the 7. I'm like,
right.
well, even if you block a vote, then that person can't vote, so they're still down 1. So I was
Yeah.
just curious about that
Yeah.
because I was like, that's strange. why it was. But also props to Rizzo for basically figuring out what it was, but not being completely correct. So
Yeah.
he's clearly paying attention to the types of advantages
Oh,
that
yeah.
are
So
doled out at this point.
I think Sophie said in one of her interviews, he's like this. I don't know if she called him this or it just popped into my mind, a survivor savant, like that he has dug into all of
Yeah.
that type of stuff. So,
It sounds like it very much.
yeah.
But yeah, I was very curious about just that component. And but yes, we can definitely get on to speaking
Okay.
about Miss Sophie Segretti.
Okay. Well, first, let me mention, of course, there were other things going on. We just can't dedicate all our time here to doing that. So, or to talking about that. So, check out my TikTok and YouTube at David Bloomberg TV. As I mentioned, some of it's already there. There are 3 videos
Mm.
already posted as we're recording this. And there will probably be, there will definitely be more as the week goes on. Also, before we get to how Sophie did, we want to mention the rules we're about to discuss come in a colorful and shorter version.
Yes, they
And
do.
that you can go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to that poster and click on it, and then
Oh,
order it.
I had an epiphany as well. We never did. I know, right? Like a Black Friday
I know. I
special.
remembered after Black Friday.
Right. So I think maybe we should do it now.
Okay. So what's the last date someone can order that you think you can get it to them by? I mean, Hanukkah is in like, I don't know, nine-ish days.
I'll
Um,
do my damnedest to get it out as soon
yeah.
as I can.
And then Christmas. Ugh. So
Yeah.
when you go to robhaswebsite.com/yxlostfeed, click on it, and click on the poster, and you will see the updated price, the special holiday
We'll,
price once you
we'll do
get it.
like a 20% off kind of thing, right?
Okay.
That's like so I think that
Yeah.
would be I think
All right.
that's what we did last time. And
Okay.
I apologize I didn't think of it sooner, but I was like,
I
"Oh,
didn't
snap.
either.
We didn't do
So
that."
all
But
right,
we'll do
so
that.
there you have it. Everybody who wants to get these for yourself or as a gift, for yourself, then hurry up and go over there so that Jessica has time because she is our shipping department.
I
So,
am the shipping department.
yeah, the sooner the better in terms of ordering. Because like last Christmas, I remember you had trouble getting shipping boxes and
Oh,
all sorts of
listen,
other
don't get
things
me
that were
started
going
on the
on. Yeah,
post office and these
yeah.
boxes.
So,
It is the
oh yeah,
worst.
order as soon as you can to make sure you get it by the holidays.
Yes.
And that also goes for if you want the poster on a t-shirt or the checklist on a t-shirt. Now, Jessica is not the shipping department for this.
I'm not,
Uh,
no.
but if you are a patron of RHAP, Rob has already sent out special codes for the shop for
Oh,
the
very
t-shirt.
nice.
So, please feel free to use them. And I know there are other new designs out there. And some of them are very nice. Some of them I don't get. I'll fully admit it. But uh, but in addition to the new designs, remember the classics. That's all I'm saying.
That's right. You
Yeah.
remember the classics. Yeah,
So,
it's nice.
all right. Well, Sophie said in her last words, I'm taking it as a little bit of a compliment that I was a big threat to everybody's game. Meanwhile, Sage said in the episode she did this to herself. In a way, they're both right. But by no means do those statements fully explain what happened. Even if Sophie was a threat, there are a lot of threats still left in this game. And
Mm-hmm.
the people made decisions based on Sophie's actions, though it's somewhat questionable whether or not those were the right decisions. Let's dig into the rest of the explanation because at RHAP, we know Survivor and we know why Sophie lost.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the first and most important rule is, of course, to scheme and plot. And last week, we saw how Sophie had really come into her own in this regard. But of course, we didn't have a good picture of how she was doing early in the game because, as you mentioned earlier, she was more purple Sophie than yellow
Yeah.
Sophie.
Yeah.
But she talked about it in her interview, saying that she was having strategic conversations and she did have allies. She just didn't have that ride or die number one.
Mm,
Instead, she was the third person in a few different situations, and I'm thinking maybe a better description was the third wheel. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, indeed, she said her biggest critique of her own game was that she needed that ride or die, especially as a physical challenge player, because you won't always win the challenges, and you need help keeping yourself safe when you don't. Much like you mentioned for Rizzo helping Savannah.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about some other things she said related to this aspect in the fifth rule, but it is an interesting idea. Of course, there's no way to go back in time and see how things would have gone if she had found that ride or die, or even who it would have been. But
Mm-hmm.
we saw some scenes on the show and other interviews that have indeed suggested she could have been out first if original Hina had gone to tribal council. And she had no real idea where she stood among that group until after the MC vote. As Alex told Gordon Holmes a couple weeks ago, she thought she was in a better position than she was a lot of the time. But of course, once she realized it, she changed things up and started to move around some more.
Yeah, and I do think that, though I don't want to jump ahead to rule 5, I see them being very intertwined
Yes.
because I do think that she had a much more difficult time actually scheming and plotting the way that she necessarily needed to, because she wasn't connecting with the people in her tribe, because she was struggling making those social connections. And so I think that she certainly made attempts to do well with this, and she certainly indicated in her exit press that we just didn't see it because they didn't show her, as you
Hmm.
indicated, that she was having those strategic conversations. But I think those conversations hit differently when there is that connection as well with the person that you're
Right.
having the conversation with. If they felt like she was a number, which is something she indicated too in her exit press, that she really started to feel like she was just a number as opposed to someone that they could work with directly and
Hmm.
wanted to, it was like, oh, well, no, Sophie can vote with us too. And so that again feels different for someone who is in that situation, that you are not as important as you necessarily want to be because you are not calling the shots. You might be involved in the conversations, but you're not pushing things in a particular
Right.
direction. And as you indicated, we did see her now kind of coming into her own and saying, you know what, I'm going to make this decision. And people were allowing her to do that, and I think that gave her more confidence to then push a little bit more, because now she had people that were willing to work with her and listen to her and give her an opportunity to make the decision. So I do see this being an interesting mix for her as far as
Right.
those connections that were lacking and how it affected her ability to strategize.
Yeah, and of course, I would say her biggest decision was last week, whether to go with Rizzo Savannah and Blue
Mhm.
Sophie, or
Right.
to go with Sage Juwan and the other two original Hina. Last week, I said she chose to go with a foursome rather than a group of five, so that puts her in a better position, especially with Final Four fire making. Maybe
Mhm.
more importantly, she probably doesn't feel she can trust Steven and Christine after they showed their cards with their surprise at the MC vote result. And indeed, I have to, excuse me, I'm going to pat myself on the back here because I hit the nail on the head with that one. She talked
Uh-huh.
about aspects of her of that in her interview with Rob, and then she also told Dalton Ross, if I had voted out Savannah, I would now be at the bottom of two duos, Stephen and Christina, who have proven that they don't really trust me, and then Sage and Jawan. And so it was really just math at that point, where being at the bottom of five is worse than being at the bottom of four. So, even
Mhm.
like I said, we've been doing this for a while. Even with the
Yeah.
outcome this week, I agree that Sophie's made the right choice. Uh, even though it ended up the way it did.
Yeah, and I do think that she's the focus for her is what we want so many people when they play this game to have the focus be.
Right.
And that's winning the game.
Right.
So for her, making it to 4 is certainly better than 5 or 6 because there is fire and she's prepared. She's like, I know how to make a
Right.
fire. And so she's in it to win it, which I do really appreciate, where the decisions that she's making are very Sophie centered.
Hmm.
They're very much about what's going to make her game better. And she was even willing to express that to Sage when having these conversations, that I have to do what's best for my game. It might not be best for yours. And I think this is a really big struggle for a lot of people that play this game, is that you have to find that balance, how you are going to get to the end in a way that's going to benefit you, but also not upset those around you. and have it happen like it did with Sophie, where now all of a sudden you're on the outs because you made a decision that was better for you.
Yes, which is what a lot of the rest of the podcast will be about. That last thing you said about, well, okay, you make your decision, but the
Mm-hmm.
but
The big old but, yeah.
we've dropped one shoe. The next upcoming rules are going to drop the other shoe multiple times.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, obviously, what happened this week was the people she chose to go with flipped on her, along with the people she flipped against. Everyone went
Mm-hmm.
against her. And
Yes.
looking back, she said in her interviews that there were a few things that should have tipped her off. Now, the one that's applicable to this rule is that Rizzo, Savannah, and Blue Sophie told her they were voting for Christina. That was their decoy claim.
Mm-hmm.
Saying it would have been better to vote out Steven, but he won immunity, so Christina was next up. And she now says that looking back, she should have seen through that because it didn't really make sense in that Christina was not a threat.
Mm-hmm.
But I actually want to cut her some slack here. I think Christina as the alternate target does make sense. It could easily be argued that, okay, they had their foursome. They weren't going to vote
Mm-hmm.
out anyone there. Sage had worked with them before, so they'd want to keep her close. That only leaves Steven and Christina.
Right.
Steven had immunity, so Christina is the obvious one. I think it makes perfect sense from a strategic numbers situation in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Looking
Right.
back, yeah, she could say that because she knows hindsight's 2020. But
Sure.
I don't think she should be kicking herself over that one.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that assessment because it is a numbers thing at this point, and you want to make sure that you have the votes to carry things forward. And if you are so worried about Steven, isn't it nice to take out Steven's
Mm-hmm.
second? Because then he doesn't
Right,
have the support system that we just talked about Savannah having through
right.
Rizzo. So you end up kind of putting him on an island on his own. And then he has to win immunity if he wants to stay in the game because there's literally nobody that's going to be
Right.
fighting for him.
No, he was on the island on his own during the journey.
He definitely will. My gosh, that poor man. God, he ran around the entire island. I love that
I know.
they did the above shot so you could see everywhere he actually
Yeah.
had to go. Oh gosh, that was a lot.
Yeah.
I'm impressed, Steven. I'm impressed.
All right. Well, we can move on to the second rule as we start getting into the other shoes, as we mentioned. It says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Remember last week when I talked about that opening scene of Rizzo explaining that he voted out Alex the prior time because he was visibly playing the middle and it gave him a better position than Rizzo, and so therefore Rizzo voted out Jawan, who you know was arguably
Mm-hmm.
in a similar situation to Alex. Well, guess what? Now he voted out Sophie, who also played the middle and flipped. Rizzo
Mm-hmm.
really does not like flip floppers. He is working
Mm-mm.
hard to ensure that Dan Foley was right when he said the immortal words, flippers never win.
Well, I mean that is a very real concern because where do you where does your loyalty lie then? How
Right.
can you rely upon this person if they are flipping? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fair.
So now, of course, as we discussed in the first rule, the fact that she flipped does not automatically mean she was over scheming. As we talked about, it was actually the correct decision.
Mm-hmm.
You could even say that the fact that she immediately wanted to flip against Savannah wasn't an issue because some of them only found that out after they decided to vote her out. So you can't say that's a reason
Oh yeah.
when
Mm-hmm.
they already decided. That was part of, Savannah even said that. Oh, I already wanted her out. And now I find out she's coming against me. Okay, so that didn't
Right,
play into
right.
your real decision then.
Mm-hmm.
But just overall, she had recently been putting herself out there as having a very clear strategic outlook.
Mm-hmm.
At the split tribal council, it got spread all over that she was playing hard because she was going to write down Jawan's name as a backup.
Mm-hmm.
And, even though the move made sense, she was absolutely right to do it.
Mm-hmm.
She just shouldn't have told anyone. And then she lectured all of us at home. And as I mentioned on the podcast that week, by my estimation, She also was lecturing former Survivor players in saying at Tribal Council how they surpassed high school level Survivor and they were in the toughest grad school class. And back in
Yes,
the day, it
yes.
was simple when it came to idols, but things are much more complicated now. And of course, there is no such thing as an easy vote anymore. All of these, it doesn't matter what we thought of them at home, but they all also conveyed a particular strategic mindset that could raise red flags.
Yes, and I think the biggest component that was attached to Sophie from just the little bits and pieces you could put together from people talking about her. Yes, she was a challenge beast and they were very cognizant of that, but they were also like she's really smart and she's putting stuff together and
Mhm.
she is someone who I do think was constantly running the numbers, which is exactly why she was wanting to go back and forth and why she was making the decisions she was making. It was about how can I make myself get further in this game. But I do agree. She didn't need to tell anybody about her plan to put down Jawan's name
Mhm.
because she could have just done that and still protected herself and not outed herself in that moment. So, yes, I do think that she struggled there by sharing, but we also learned that she thought she had a close relationship with MC. She thought that
Right.
she was able to share with her. But again, this goes back to that. Did she really have the social connections that she needed to have those conversations that really mattered in those moments? Because if you compare it to Rizzo and Savannah, if Rizzo and Savannah had had the same conversation, it wouldn't have
It
come
was
back
it
to
was
haunt
locked up.
either of them.
Yeah.
Right, it was locked up. So that's really, I think, where Sophie ended up struggling the most is even trying to scheme a plot too much. She couldn't because she didn't have anybody to scheme a plot with.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but it made her try harder and it made her put out
Sure.
there more, which,
Mhm.
contributed to that image.
Yes.
All right. Well, the third rule tells players to be flexible. Now, we already discussed some of her flip flopping, but overall, how do you think she did here?
Well, I think she did what she needed to do. So she probably did it well, though it didn't set well with others because she was going back and forth and kind of changing her mind, but she was doing that in a way that made sense for what she needed at the time. And I do think her explanations that she provided in the exit press make even more sense. You're like, "Oh, well that's why she did it because she's looking at the numbers." And
Hmm.
so she wanted to be flexible, but she was doing it in a way that would have furthered her game. So though it was good for her, it ended up being bad for her because it made people think she was a flip flopper.
Yeah. Yeah. I do think she was flexible. She showed it by being willing to move around the game board and also by changing her mind as circumstances shifted. Just
Mhm.
a few weeks ago in episode 7, she said, "I'm tired of Rizzo and Savannah. They're playing really hard. I want them to go home." But then when it made sense for her to work with them, as we discussed, that's what
Mhm.
she did. And
Right.
in the process, she was acting as something of a free agent and getting information from all sides, which she could then use to help her whichever way she decided to go.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, the fourth rule tells players not to let their emotions control them. As I mentioned earlier, and will again in a little while, a number of players were making decisions based on emotions this week. But Sophie was not one of them.
Mm-mm.
Even earlier in the split tribal council vote, we saw her decide to vote out MC despite them being what she thought was close because she believed it was the best option once all hell broke loose there. I continue to disagree with that assessment, but that's a different matter. She made the decision for the right reason, even if it was the wrong decision. There was, however, one instance of her admittedly playing emotionally, and that was last episode. She told Mike Bloom, "The reason that I chose Jawan is because I was close with Sage. I was playing a little bit with my heart, not going to lie. I had a closer relationship with Sage, and she had also proven to trust me and clued me in on things and really had my back. And in retrospect, maybe I should have just voted her out and stuck with Jawan."
Mm. Yeah. And but I was curious when I was reading this too, though, because if she had kept, was she even working with Jawan at all?
No.
So it's one of those situations where if she doesn't have anybody to strategize with, is it a terrible idea that she chose the one person who was kind of strategizing with her? You know?
To
Even though I
stay.
know
You mean to
to
stay
stay.
or
Right,
I
to
mean,
stay.
yes, but that only matters if that person will be willing to strategize with you afterwards, and if
Well,
you
and
need
that's
them to.
fair. And if you're taking out that person's number 1, then
Right.
we have exactly what we saw, where Sage is very frustrated and upset with
Yes.
Sophie and decided it was her mission to, seek revenge against Sophie. So, yeah, I could see why
Yeah.
that didn't end up.
And that's exactly it. You know, she talked about this. Part of the reason she said it was that, you know, because of how Sage ended up reacting. She continued to Mike. In doing so, because we had that close bond and breaking her trust, it was so much worse.
Okay, that makes sense, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which
Yeah.
moves us nicely into the fifth rule.
Mhm.
Uh,
Look at that.
which reminds players they need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. And by taking out Sage's absolute closest ally and friend, she really hit a nerve that made Sage completely focus all her energy against her.
Mm.
Uh, Sophie told Mike Bloom, the biggest red flag that I should have realized was just how devastated Sage was with this Joanne vote. At one point, I'm like, I'm not going to apologize. And in retrospect, I knew that she and Joanne were close. I don't think I grasped how personally that would hurt her. And I thought that her dislike of Savannah, which she had been so very open about up until this point and wanting her out, would outweigh my great betrayal in getting out Joanne. And I think I just really read that wrong. Sage was down bad those couple of days and was quite emotional and clearly very, very upset. And I think had I just kind of clued in a little bit more, I would have been like, oh, she is so much more upset about Jawan than she's ever been about Savannah. You got to do a little damage control here.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's good that she sees it now. You know, that's one thing I'll say about Sophie. She has taken a look back at her game and she has pretty well objectively analyzed it. We may not agree across the board, and I may
Sure.
be, like we said, I may be cutting her more slack than she cut herself in certain areas. But a lot of players come off and they would not have realized this. They would have just said, Sage needed to get over it. But
Yeah.
Sophie
And yeah.
realizes, oh, I needed to do something to help Sage get over it. But she
Mhm.
didn't. She didn't see it at the time. She didn't do the damage control. She was missing two key aspects of the social game there.
Yeah. Well, and interestingly enough, one of the things that she noted about herself in her initial like introductory press was that she was worried about her social game. She had a concern about
Hmm.
having a great social game. And so she did recognize that in herself. She also mentioned who cares if you hurt people's feelings. So I feel like
Yes.
that's, if you're going into the game realizing that I have a legitimate concern about the type of social game I'm going to play, and I don't care if I hurt people's feelings. We saw this all come to fruition with what happened with Sage, and it's after the fact where she's realizing, oh, maybe I should have taken that into consideration more than I did, because not everybody plays Survivor the same way Sophie was playing it, which was very kind of methodical and by the numbers, and how do I get to the end and how do I win. You have someone like Sage who is forming a bond with someone so much so that she's putting the $1 million aside so she can seek revenge against this person. And so it is an interesting component that people have to be aware of when they're playing the game, that not everybody is looking at it in that same light.
Right. And yeah, I mean, yeah, last week I said I was happy to hear her say about the reward that she felt bad for people at camp who weren't eating, but at the same time, this is $1 million game and I want that money for myself.
Right.
And then later she said exactly what you mentioned. I'm going to piss off some of these people, but I have to remind myself this is a game for $1 million. Be
Mm-hmm.
ruthless, be strategic, and make nice when you're a millionaire back home. Those are great thoughts from a strategic standpoint,
Yes.
but you have to balance them if you know you're going to make people angry, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
And that did seem to be where some of her issues were, because not only did she piss off Jeff by dissing his fruit as a reward earlier in the game, but Alex told Dalton Ross she rubbed some people the wrong way with how much she talked about her choice of words or and her choice of words at mat chats. She didn't
Hmm.
really have the relationships that others of us had in the game. So
Yeah.
clearly, yeah, she was pissing people off. And in a way, and by no means am I comparing the two, in a way, it reminds me of Russell Hantz. Russell Hantz
Mm.
said, well, I'm doing my strategy, and that's all that matters. And, he twice claimed he should have won because it shouldn't matter if you piss people off. Now, Sophie
Well,
didn't say
those
it
are the
doesn't
people that
matter.
are voting to
Right.
decide who wins $1 million. So,
And in your
yeah, it
case,
does
voting
matter.
whether or not to keep you. So,
Right.
yeah, exactly. So, I mean, Russell was the cause for emphasizing more of the, Rule 5, this
Mm.
very rule, the social game, after he lost back to back that way. It
Mhm.
had to be emphasized even more in the rules.
Yeah.
So, I, I mean, she also had, besides the pissing off issue, she had some other things going on because, going back to the split tribal council decision, one reason Rizzo gave for wanting to vote out MC instead of Sophie was that Sophie's web of connections extended to nobody, according to him.
Mm.
And referencing back to the early part of the game when we didn't really see her, in addition to what she said in interviews about not having a ride or die, she also told Dalton Ross, I didn't go hard enough socially early on because I was worried about seeming too eager and playing too hard. And I think that's what ended up biting me in the end because MC was more loyal to Steven than she was to me. I feel like I was trying to keep my options open and be friends with lots of people. And it was a little bit of a jack of all trades, master of none in that situation.
Mm. Yeah, that's a really great way to explain it for
Right.
sure. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, this was definitely a big thing, the social aspect, the pretending to be nice is if you're pissing people off, you have to do something to try and reel them back in, not just say, I'm
Right.
not going to apologize.
And there's also something to be said when it's like a combination, right? You know that you're pissing people off. You also know that you're beating people in challenges.
Right.
And you also know that there are groups forming around you and you are not part of those groups. So it's like a perfect storm of things that are going to work against you in the end because you don't have anything that is going to help you get through that part of the game or any part of the game because you could be the person pissing everyone off, but if you've got a ride or die that's helping keep you there, then that can be a huge benefit to you. But if you don't, well, then people are going to be focusing on, well, she's pissing people off. So yeah, it is a very tough spot to find yourself in when you have all of these things that can work against you because you don't have anything working for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can go to the sixth rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. I mentioned earlier that part of Sophie's last words were, I'm taking it as a little bit of a compliment that I was a big threat to everyone's game. And yes, I'll confirm that is indeed true. But everyone who takes that as a compliment needs to stop taking it as a compliment. Because the idea is to avoid being seen as too much of a threat. So this does not happen to you. If you're voted out
Mm-hmm.
as a threat, okay, it's a compliment to that aspect of your game, but it's a criticism of this rule, how you did in this rule.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I do think that Sophie's challenge wins were certainly a concern that people had, especially when you get to this part of the game where it is individual immunity that people are fighting for. And so if you are winning, then that's something that could work against you. However, we saw Savannah happy that Sophie was there because that is a little bit of a shield for her. So again, it can work for you, but it can also work against you. And I do think that we heard a lot of people talk about their concern with her ability. She spoke very well and she seemed like she was very aware of the game and that she could probably argue her point very well. So I do think that people saw her as a threat, but I think the biggest threat component came from what we've already talked about is her not having loyalty to anyone. And that can become a great concern because if Sophie decides, well, you're next, because now I need to get to the end and you're a threat to me getting to the end. So then Sophie becomes a threat to everyone because nobody knows where her loyalty actually lies.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even have that in my list of reasons she was a threat. That adds on. It's a very good point.
Mhm.
What I was more focused on was the other two aspects, which was, I mean, we started to see why some people wanted to target her as a threat, a challenge threat, before we even knew who she was.
Right,
Like,
right.
she even told Mike Bloom almost from day one. Christina was kind of like, we need to get Sophie out at least early in the merge. If we get there, she's got to go. And,
Mm.
I said last week that Sophie was silly to believe Savannah was a shield for her, and that if anything, she was a shield for Savannah. Well, look what
Mhm.
happened and who went out first. The
Right.
shield.
Mhm. Yeah.
And then on top of that, a number of players talked about how Sophie would look good in the final tribal council because she was the only one to have voted correctly every time.
Oh,
Both
yes, there was that too.
both
Mhm.
Rizzo and Savannah promoted that idea to different people. I'm sure it was probably planned as another lobbying effort,
Sure.
much like when Rizzo was making Alex out to be a huge threat a couple weeks ago. But this was even better because it was true and everyone could see it. It was something that was out there.
Mhm.
You didn't need an imagination to see that. It added
Right.
a strategic element to her threat resume.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
And
Well,
so
there you
now
go.
with your part too, the loyalty, that's three different ways that she was a
Mhm.
threat. And, then on top of that, I guess you could call it a fourth, it came out that Sophie was indeed trying to target Rizzo. Like I said earlier, they wanted her out before then, but this was, in the words of Rizzo eventually, the cherry on top.
Yeah. I mean, oftentimes the people are looking for one reason to vote people out, and
Mm,
Sophie was giving them a lot of reasons to vote her out.
hmm Just in this rule.
That's yes, just in this rule. Mhm.
Okay, well, we can go to yet another rule, the seventh, which covers idols and advantages in game mechanics. And she didn't have any idols or advantages. She knew about people who did, and she was among those who purposely did not target Rizzo in his idol. Seeing what her eventual plan was, I can understand her not wanting to vote him out. So, although it was upsetting at the time, I think I'm okay with that part looking back.
Well, and was she involved at all in the sharing of Christina having an idol, or was that
hmm
just yeah,
She
she
passed
was.
everything along because
Yeah.
Sage passed it to her.
Mhm.
And, there was three fastest forms of communication were telephone, telegraph, and telesophie.
Oh, if we still did hashtags, that's the hashtag.
Yeah.
Tell us, Sophie.
So, yeah. Now, one place that I do think she should have done something different in this rule, although by the time I get done with this, we're going to find out it probably didn't matter. But I think she needed to fight to go on that journey rather than just letting Steven do it.
Yes, that
Yes,
is so true. Like, why did they all just kind of roll over and be like, "Well, I don't want to get tired for
it was
immunity challenge." So,
strenuous.
yes, it was
Um,
strenuous.
I mean, she did expand a little in her interviews. I mean, she knew he was seen as a fellow threat, a viable target.
Mm,
And sure, he ended up winning the immunity challenge even after doing the strenuous work. So it didn't matter. Maybe that's why he was so tired he couldn't walk fast. So he had to walk that slow. So, that's
I
how
didn't
he
like
did
the
it.
spinny thing. The
I,
spinny, really,
I
that
don't
was
think Jeff did either because Jeff said in the On Fire podcast, yeah, maybe we go back. Maybe we don't use this version anymore.
yeah, it
So,
was not. There was one drop. That was
right.
it. It was one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't
So,
like that.
so I, she didn't know, of course, he would win the immunity challenge. So
Sure.
why give this guy a possible advantage?
Mhm.
But she said in her interview she worried it might be something like MC and Nate went on earlier, and she saw how wrecked MC was when she came back.
Mm,
So
mhm.
that's why she didn't want to risk it. Now, I will say, even if she had gone and gotten the voting block advantage, I don't think it would have mattered. She talked about
Mm,
how Savannah had previously told her about Savannah's extra vote, and just in general, she liked the sharing of information as a means of forming bonds. So I bet she would have done that with at least a couple people,
mm,
whichever side it might have been that she was going with.
mhm.
And because they were all working together, word would have spread. They would have realized also, oh, it doesn't matter. We're voting her
Right.
out unanimously. She could block a vote. Who cares?
Right.
But again, that's all hindsight. I still think she should have given it a shot so that Steven couldn't. But by her own admission in interviews, she felt like she was in a comfortable spot.
Yes. Yeah. All good points.
All right. Well, then we can go to Appendix A, which discusses players keeping their end goals in mind when voting. We talk about voting out the weak, then the strong, then the weak, then the strong. And as I've said for the past few weeks, at this portion of the game, you typically want to get out someone who is still strong on the opposing side. For some of them, Sophie was indeed on the opposing side. But you know who else was? Savannah.
Savannah.
I did the same thing to you that Savannah did also. They get, you get one guess, me. And it's like, no, you got to give us time to make the guess. Uh, they again had the chance to get rid of Savannah and they took out someone else instead.
I know. It's incredible to me.
Yes, once again, they built up someone other than the person who is already built up.
Yeah.
This person has been sitting there. They're built so high up there on a dang mountain. But then somehow you keep building taller mountains. Yeah. And usually they're building those taller mountains out of molehills. Rizzo once again presented the other side with this, quote, common enemy instead of himself or his allies, and they bought it.
Well, and I think they certainly did,
Yeah.
which is I'm stunned that they did. But I also think that you had you could see Sage was seething. She was so upset.
yeah.
She was so angry. And so I think Rizzo just leaned in hard on that too, where you have an opportunity to take advantage of someone else emotionally at that moment. And I'm certain that he just played right into that with her as well. Like, can
Yeah.
you believe?
I don't know if he saw. It's hard to say. We saw
Sure.
almost no interaction there. But it's possible he saw that and realized it too.
Well, I'm trying to think because there was there was one scene where it was where Sage was mentioned. Oh yeah, no, Sage is definitely on board. So there had to have been some conversations that were had.
Right.
But yes, it is fascinating to me that while Sophie, I think, was certainly a threat to a lot of them in a final three situation, Savannah is too. And
Yeah.
you can rile the troops or rally the troops, whatever you want. Like next time, if you want to go after Sophie, like now's your chance. And yes, you still have Rizzo's idol to contend with and think about,
Right.
but the numbers are only dwindling and you're only losing the ability to get the momentum back towards Savannah. And you've now voted out someone who wanted to vote out Savannah.
Right. Everyone says they want to take out Savannah. Everyone says they want to take out Rizzo or at least his idol. And nobody does it either.
No.
And yeah, we've been saying throughout the podcast that some people were playing emotionally. And like you mentioned, that's exactly what happened here. Sage said, I've been pitching Savannah since day one, but at this point, I'm frickin' pissed at Sophie.
Yeah.
And then throughout the episode, almost every time she talked about wanting to get Sophie out, she would name a strategic reason and an emotional one. For example, she said, Sophie is smart and in tune. Quote, and I could get some revenge. And, she said she's a huge challenge threat. And it would double as revenge for Jawan. So there was always that emotional aspect of things.
Right.
Yeah. At tribal council, Sage said, if you're looking at game and emotional, for emotional, the easy vote is revenge. Game, that might not be the same case. But if someone's game decision also gives them a little bit of revenge too, I'm not hating on it. Here's the thing too. Or here's the thing though. It's really easy to talk yourself into believing you're voting someone out for strategic reasons when you're already mad at them.
Yes.
And it wasn't,
yes.
It wasn't what she said is if you're voting someone out for strategic reasons, then if someone's game decision also gives them the revenge. But it was the other way around. It was someone's wanting revenge could also be backfilled into making it look like a game decision because you cherry pick the reasons. Most of us
Mhm.
do it in our own lives. If
Mhm.
there's someone you don't like and they're doing something, you're more likely to nitpick things about them that you would blow off if they were your friends.
Well, right. Yes. And I think that Sophie was the perfect type of mix of components that allowed Sage to do this, because Sage did have all of those other qualities that did make her a potential threat in a final three. But
Sophie.
then on top of it, or excuse me,
Yeah.
Sophie had all of those qualities. And then on top of it, she had turned on Sage's number one ally. And so it is an extra component. So, yes, you can take all of those things and go, well, there's this, and now there's this too.
Right.
Instead of, well, there's this, and those existed before. And yes, we have this other thing, but this is a game for $1 million. And so she explained to me her reasons why she voted him out. Like, she literally sat down with her
Right.
immediately after the tribal council and said, "These are all of the reasons why." And all of the reasons why she wanted, when I say she, Sage wanted to vote out Savannah, haven't gone away because Jawan got voted out.
Right.
Like, they are still in existence. And if you get rid of Sophie, your ability to get rid of Savannah, who you have been trying to get rid of since the beginning of this game, basically, are less now, because the numbers are that much less. And
Yeah.
you're putting yourself in just a terrible position to try to make any real moves considering who's left.
Yeah. I mean, revenge was clearly the driving force.
Mhm.
The strategic elements were thrown in as a rationalization after the fact
Yes.
for a decision that
Yes.
had already been made. And then
Mhm.
meanwhile, Rizzo and Savannah are over there fanning the flames to ensure that Sage stayed hot, like you said
Yes.
earlier.
Yeah.
I do wonder, I hadn't thought about this earlier. I do wonder, much like in previous votes, we've been saying, oh, they didn't know about the extra vote. They didn't know about the knowledge is power. So they thought they would have time to do these other things. I
Mm.
wonder if Stephen getting his advantage helped Sage figure out or feel like, we're going to have three, they're going to have three, and Steven has an advantage, which Rizzo at least is going around telling everyone is a steal a vote.
Oh, that's interesting.
So
Yeah.
we will have six to do this. But
Right.
again, if they're thinking about this is just me, pulling that out of the air, surmising a little bit.
Mhm.
If they were thinking that way, again, it goes back to what I said probably last week and the week before, which was you don't know what you don't know in Survivor.
Right. Right. Mhm. Yeah.
Go with what you got. Make the
Yes.
move, strike while the iron is hot.
Mhm. 100%. Yeah.
In this case, it was strike while Sage is red hot.
Which was not the right choice.
No. All right. Well, we have Appendix B, which discusses the jury phase. And we've already discussed how one reason targeting Sophie made sense was that she was indeed a threat if she made it to the end. But I don't think she was nearly as big a threat as she was made out to be. Uh, you know, as we talked about, she didn't really have those social connections, and people were frequently annoyed with her. Her flip flopping wouldn't have helped, probably, even though she could use it to say that's how she stayed on the right side of the vote all the time. And even the part about being a challenge beast would not have been terribly convincing when she had the same number of individual wins as Savannah and Steven as of now.
Mm. Mhm.
Plus Savannah and Steven both got advantages. So, right now, she wasn't even ahead in that regard,
Yeah.
which leads back to the same point we've been talking about, that this wasn't really taking out a big final tribal council threat. It was about all the other factors we've already discussed.
And I am curious too, because we've talked about this quite a bit. When someone is in the final three, and if there's a moment where you have to choose between this person and that person, perhaps you choose the person that you like more, right? We've seen that happen. And
I mean,
so if she
yeah,
is sitting there and if she's frustrated people who are on the jury, what are they going to base their decision on if it comes down to her against another person who they might
right.
like better?
I think that this group is pretty game oriented. I think they will be making the decision based on game, but like you said, I think that could be a deciding factor. If two people
Mhm.
are there who scored about the same on their game test,
Mhm. Right. Right.
one puts it a little higher up.
Right. Yeah. That's why I have
So,
this theory. I have
yep,
a theory.
you have a theory. Well,
I have a
now is
theory.
the time for your theory. I think if now is when you're going to do it, because it's time to wrap things up and for you to give us your final thoughts about Sophie.
Well, Sophie, you weren't my winner pick, Sophie, but you were still a great option as a potential winner pick because we like the Sophies. And I will say that I was curious about Sophie from the start, and I was going back looking at some of the notes I had taken. Now, she was an alternate for season 48. And if she's an
Mm-hmm.
alternate, that means she's probably got some good things in the cooker, right? I've learned, Rachel, I'm sorry, I've learned that alternates can go on and win the game. And so I looked at her immediately and thought, well, she's probably got some good things because she was an alternate for another season. So I was curious how that was going to work out for her. However, if we remember, one of the biggest issues that we talked about pregame was Matt's dislike of the person that had the necklace with the cursive writing on it. And that
Santa.
was, yes, and that was this Sophie. And so it started right from the rip, right? It started before the actual game actually started, where Sophie with an E was already rubbing people the wrong way a little bit. And that was just pregame. And we saw her struggle with this in game. She admitted openly in her exit press that one of her biggest mistakes was not having a ride or die. I think Sophie came into this game very mathematically, that looking at the numbers, and if I do this, that will put me over here. If I do that, that will put me over here. Where am I going to fall within this number alignment? Am I going to move up? Am I going to move down? Unfortunately, Survivor is not always about a game of math. Yes, you have to be aware of the numbers, you have to be aware of where that's going to put you, but at the same time, you need somebody next to you. You need that plus one. That's math too, right? You need that plus one to get you further in the game, which we see Rizzo and Savannah helping each other throughout this process. Sophie didn't have that person. She didn't have that ride or die. She was a number that was helping other people bring about the votes that they wanted. And eventually she was allowed to make a decision as to who she wanted to have go home, but it was still for the benefit of the others around her. And going back and forth and deciding where she thought was going to bring her further in the game ended up ultimately becoming part of her downfall because she was seen as a flip flopper. She was seen as someone who didn't go along with other people the way that they necessarily wanted her to. And unfortunately, her game time decision of I'm going to choose Jawan as my vote out because it's going to fix the numbers portion of my game turned into the exact reason why Sage wanted her to go home. And that was clearly revenge. And so you have to be mindful in this game of emotionally how you are affecting those around you and the relationships that you formed. And if you upset someone so much, you can find yourself being voted out for that very reason because not everybody is playing this game with the numbers like Sophie was doing. So it was great to see her being a challenge beast. I loved watching her win. Sad to see her go, but my Sophie winner pick is still there. So I'm at least okay with that.
So I started the rules section of the podcast by mentioning that Sophie took it as a compliment that they blindsided her this way because it meant she was a threat. And I mentioned that again in that rule. And yes, it's true. She was indeed a threat, but that mostly means she didn't do a good enough job of hiding her threat level. Plus, there were other threats in the game, such as Savannah, who's been seen as one for a while now. The fact that everyone decided to go after Sophie instead shows there was more going on here. Part of it is, as Sage said, she did this to herself. And she did. She began the game not being strategic or social enough. When she realized she was in trouble, she shifted into a new game gear and she became very strategic. That helped her game in one way, but it hurt her in others. She was thinking strategically, but not socially. As much as I say people shouldn't let their emotions control them, most of the people you play with on Survivor are human and have those emotions. So you need to be wary of how your actions and words will impact them. She admittedly wasn't paying close attention to that, and she pissed off Sage so much It even overcame her previous focus on getting rid of Savannah. Plus, her openly strategic statements and actions raised red flags, whether for real or as an easy excuse to get people to focus on her. She could be painted as not just a challenge threat, but as a strategic one as well. And as you mentioned, a loyalty threat. And that all just piled on to the emotion based decision already being made against her. She was a threat. She did it to herself, but others also did it to her by focusing a magnifying glass on both of those things and by making decisions that were not in their best interests long term. And that is why Sophie lost.
There we are.
There we are.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, before we get to predictions,
Mm.
want to remind everyone, I mentioned this earlier, Omer Zahir will be here next week with us as we have our penultimate Y blank lost, arguably our final Y blank lost before a Y blank won. And of course, we want to also remind everyone that the rules we just discussed are available in poster form,
20% off.
20% off, and in t-shirt form, discount if you're a patron and you got that patron code. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed and order away for yourself,
That's
for
right.
others, for everyone.
Buy it all. Just buy it all.
Yes.
Oh, my little dog is snoring back here. She's very content. So what are we doing now? Are we doing predictions?
Well, your dog has to tell us where people can find us on social media.
Oh, we'll do that first. Okay. So social media, not doing so well for Jessica right now. I'm sorry. I'm just not as into it as I used to be, but that's okay. I do poke around there a little bit every once in a while. I'm at Jessica Lewis 89 on Blue Sky and Twitter, and I'm at Jessica Lewis 6789 on Instagram. But what I really just do is steal the content of the gentleman sitting next to me because he posts wonderful things on his Instagram stories, and I just grab those and post them on mine. So I appreciate it very much, David Bloomberg. You do a great job. And David Bloomberg is so much a social media guru that he has to have a link tree to keep track of all of the stuff that he posts, the content. It's incredible. Never thought that he would be so into TikTok, and he is. So speak to them about your link tree, David, and all of the places that they can find you and your content.
Well, that is at linktree/David Bloomberg. You can find me directly on Blue Sky as at David Bloomberg. And on the video sites, TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram, I have been posting 2 or 3 reality TV short videos every day where I'm at David Bloomberg TV. Now, most of those videos are about Survivor 49, plus the Traders Canada Season 3. Now, I am also co-hosting the Tradar podcast for the Traders Canada each week. So you could check out the Tradar, TRAIDAR, either wherever you get podcasts or we're on YouTube as well. All right. Well, now it is time for predictions, your favorite part. And I mentioned earlier, I have theories. I have many theories.
I love this.
All but one of them will be wrong. It's possible.
All but one?
All but one. It's possible all of them will be wrong. The preview tells us lines are drawn. It's an all-out war. And all I could think of was, wow, imagine how much different that war would be if one of the generals had been taken out this week.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
so crazy.
Nothing we could do about that now. The lines are obvious. Rizzo, Savannah, and Sophie versus Sage, Steven, and Christina. As we mentioned earlier, the block of vote should give Steven's side the majority, 3-2. Especially because Sophie doesn't know she can't steal his advantage. Because
and we need to make sure people understand that. Yes. Please explain that.
Yeah, because he officially plays it before Tribal Council. She plays her thing in Tribal Council. Now, those of us talking about it on Blue Sky already figured this out just by looking at the rules for each. But Dalton did confirm this with, with Jeff and posted
guy.
about that. That guy, yes. I almost said with Rob, like Rob would have it, But if it wasn't, I would have serious issues with the way they wrote the rules for both of those. So
Oh, for
thankfully,
sure.
they knew what they were doing in this case.
They don't need a rule checker like you.
They do need a rule checker usually,
but not for that one.
For that
I
one, they
figured
got
that.
it right. This
Yeah.
one's pretty blatantly obvious, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, she can't steal it, but she doesn't know that. So she may well try to. I figure there are two primary outcomes I could see. Well, at the start of thinking this through, I did. Either Sophie decides to flip and steal Rizzo's idol, and then everyone but Savannah votes him out. Okay, that's one possibility. Or Sophie stays loyal but pretends to flip in order to find out who the other side will be voting out, then passes that information back so Rizzo can use his idol appropriately. The problem with the second scenario is I really find it hard to believe that Sage, Steven, and Christina would trust Sophie enough to tell her that information.
Mm-hmm.
She would have to really convince them she's anti-Savannah for that to be the case. I don't know that it's possible.
I don't think that's happening.
But maybe she really is anti-Savannah and knows taking out those two is the only way she can win.
Mm-hmm.
Then she just doesn't pass along information. She lets it happen, or she takes Rizzo's idol to ensure that he doesn't use it on himself or Savannah. And then Sophie herself has the idol for Final Five to be safe.
Yes.
So that's a possibility.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one I came up with is that Savannah wins the immunity challenge, meaning Rizzo is the obvious target, but they all know he has an idol and would be a fool not to finally use it at this point. So Sage, Steven, and Christina plan to vote out Sophie. But of course, Sophie would see this coming as well, just like we can see this as a possibility. So she could steal Rizzo's idol and use it on herself immediately, not as a goal to get rid of Rizzo, but as a goal to save herself.
Mm-hmm.
All three of those votes don't count, but the two remaining votes go to Sage or Steven. And the more I thought about this, the more I like this prediction. So this is the one I'm going to go with. Considering how much they wanted Steven out previously, it seems very clear to me he will be the next target. So unfortunately, I'm going to predict it goes from everything's coming up Steven to all the votes are coming up Steven. And he has his torch snuffed next week, unfortunately.
You really think so?
I do.
I am leaning towards a Steven win at this point. Because
I'd be happy with that, certainly.
I would be happy with that too, because I feel like he's had this kind of like slow build, which I've very much appreciated about his game and the way that he's been portrayed. But also, we've seen him in challenges and he's doing well. I certainly think that there's going to be a lot of crazy things that are happening this week, but I do think that he is going to win immunity. This is what I think he's going to end up winning immunity, and that's going to put Savannah in a very tough spot. And I do think we are going to see my girl Sophie do what she should have done or what she needs to do, and that is steal the idol from Rizzo so they can vote out Savannah, because she has already said to both not just other people, but also in her confessionals, I cannot sit next to Savannah. She knows that. She understands that she can't sit next to Savannah. And so I think that there is a world in which she comes to that realization that I need to do this now if I'm going to make it happen, because my chances of doing so are going to dwindle, because she might win immunity next time. That's my theory, is that we are going to see a Savannah go home.
I mean, that is very interesting because, yeah, she could take it. She wouldn't have to know who's being targeted. It wouldn't matter if she just steals the idol, as long as either she plays it for herself to ensure she's safe, or she holds on to it to ensure she's safe till Final Four.
Right.
You know, whether they're going after Rizzo or Savannah doesn't matter to her at that point.
Exactly. And that's why I think we're going to see that. Now, I'm still hoping for a Sophie win because she's my winner pick, but we know that that doesn't happen. And so I'm like, a
It's
little
truly a
frustrated.
miracle she's lasted this long with that curse you put on her.
Listen, I'm like, I have to breathe because
Yeah.
this is an amazing moment that this is happening. So I'm really hoping that Sophie, without a knee, pulls it out. But I think that we are in a world in which we've heard enough of her mentioning this, like, need to do this, and if I could steal it. So she's very aware. And the fact that she hasn't told anyone gives me
Yes.
comfort, because she even had an opportunity with Savannah when Savannah was like, I want to share something with you. I'm not going to tell anyone else. And Sophie let her tell everything she needed to tell, and didn't go, now let me do the same. She was smart enough to know, nope, no one ever needs to know about this. So I think this gives me a lot of ability to believe in her understanding this game. And she doesn't ever say, I can't sit next to Rizzo, but she has said, I cannot sit next to Savannah.
Right. Right. Okay. Well, this will be. I mean, it'll be interesting. Well, it has the potential to be interesting, no matter
Sure.
what.
Absolutely.
Whether it turns out to be interesting is another matter. But I
Hmm.
think that I think things are going to happen.
Yes.
That definitely. Oh, what could it be? So yeah, we'll see.
Hmm.
In the meantime, as we wrap up, I want to encourage people to check out the RHAP patron program at robhaswebsite.com/patron. You get access to all the special podcasts just for patrons, plus Facebook groups, Discord, discounts on the merch shop around the holidays, discounts on live show tickets, things like that. And of course, most importantly, you support shows like this one and everything on the network. So again,
Hmm.
that's robhasawebsite.com/patron. Also, make sure you're subscribed to all the RHAP Survivor podcasts by going to weknowsurvivor.com right below us
That's
there.
right.
You can see all the various Survivor podcasts, and also just select your podcast service of choice so that you can subscribe that way. Get all the content like us, the Know-It-Alls, the B&B, Survivor Global, and much more.
Now, we also want to thank all of those people that put that content out there for all of you to enjoy. Thank you to RHAP for the incredible work that you do, and for the creation of all of the content that David Bloomberg just spoke of. We would like to thank Scott and Jess for the editing that they conduct with the RHAP team. Thank you so much for that. You all do an incredible job. Thank you to Will from America for the theme song that you did create for this particular podcast that you hear on the audio version. It's very catchy. It's a lovely tune. Thank you so much. And David, thank you for another incredible podcast that we were able to enjoy together. My mother, again, will be very pleased that
Oh, good. Yes.
it was the two of us. We love having guests, but they don't always work out. And I think, next week, everyone will get to enjoy Omer with us. So that will be lovely. So, yeah,
Yes.
so here we are. Another nice week. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. And thank you, Jessica, of course. Always great. And, like you said, next week we'll have Omer for real. And, it wasn't a bait and switch, I promise. Uh, and yeah, we will see you then. And then for the finale, if you can believe it, in just 2 weeks.
It's crazy.
So, but in the meantime, you can find us on social media. And like I said, see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.